Tonight, I want to take you on a journey. I want you to walk back with me in time, just a little bit. So just about a cup of coffee. Everything that you know about a cup of coffee, the stimulant, the caffeine, all that kind of stuff, just forget it. Just relax, let go of everything that you know. I'm going to take you to a different cup of coffee. So stepping back a little bit in time, I want you to imagine that you're in a part of Africa with thorn trees. It's dusty, it's cold, it's winter. You drive up the side of a mountain, and as you crest it, just to the left of you, you see these two humps. It's a hill, but it looks like 2 feet up in the air. The sun lighting in the corner, just coming in. How do you then view your world? You see the trees, the grass, the dust. To the left of you is a lovely marula tree. You go and sit down underneath it. You put up your feet, and it sort of mirrors the little hill next to you. Your grandfather opens the thermos flask, pours a cup of coffee and hands it to you. In that warm cup of coffee, you can feel the warmth penetrating your cold, chilled fingers. And he asks, "How are you?" Not a general statement. It's just the two of you. It's a genuine, "How are you?" And that is the start of an amazing relationship. That was my first cup of coffee. Through my 20s and for the rest of my life with my grandfather, every time we talked, it was back to that first cup of coffee. It was taking that first cup of coffee and connecting. It was taking that first cup of coffee and remembering, "How are you?" And we talked about the smallest little things in life, the things that touch us that cost no money. So in those small acts of human kindness, we find each other. And that's something my grandfather gave me. Now, what happened behind the scenes? There was this hormone active called oxytocin. And oxytocin is our relationship hormone. So when somebody gives you a cup of coffee, you get a hit of oxytocin. When you give someone a cup of coffee, you get a hit of oxytocin. And when you observe someone giving someone else a cup of coffee, you get a hit of oxytocin. So it doesn't just work for the people involved, it also works for the people observing it. And that's what's been happening in the last 20 years. We're starting to see more connections between different types of research. We can go from psychological theory, behavioral theory, observations, through to biology, through to hormones, and through to genes. Because of the advent of big data, we can finally start to understand how relationships work. It's not just behavior anymore, it is science. It's not just behavior anymore, it's a cup of coffee. It's not just a cup of coffee, it's oxytocin. I want to take you a little bit further back in time. I have this amazing woman in my life. I like to call her Mom. From the early ages, from before I went to school, she was there to teach me. By the time I went to school, I could read and write because she was there and she taught me. But even further back, to those first connections, to the first sort of, you know, like mummies play with kids, and the baby smiling up at her. That's where oxytocin makes its entrance. And that is where oxytocin starts connecting you. It does it to the extent that a mummy's neurological pathways forever changes to have that connection with that child, to reinforce it, to bond, to imprint. Some people refer to it jokingly as mummy brain. Now, for the men, they tend to say that, Chris, a surprise for you. Recent research have shown that it is not mummy brain, it's parent brain. Some gay dads were studied, and it showed that the primary caregiver also got that hit of oxytocin, those neurological changes, and forever became a parent. Forever became somebody that could connect and could understand. Forever became somebody that could know what you need, could see it and help you. What I want to do now is I want to take a step a little bit further into the future. I want us to go to 2008. I was working for a software development company, and we had a rather large customer. It served about 12 million people, and it had a call center with thousands of people working in there. In the middle of the financial crisis, I was asked, would you become the company's first account manager? And would you take over this large customer? Not only this, they're responsible for more than 50% of the revenue. Can you imagine the pressure? How many jobs are now hanging in the balance when I make a mistake? You must remember this is in the middle of the financial crisis. Everything you do feels like it's immense. Every problem is exaggerated. As a software development company, creativity is your lifeblood, and that seems to not be happening. Testers are testing software, coming back with reports saying there's errors, and people are taking their heads off as if they're the enemy. What's going on here? Well, what's going on is something different. What's going on is a drug called cortisol. And cortisol has a bit of a problem. It affects you negatively. Not just negatively, it brings a few things down, namely your ability to perform. Every time that your executive functions are engaged, every time that you're trying to think clearly, every time that you're trying to be your best self, cortisol hits you. So I can't do this today. Trip, trip, trip. What does cortisol do? Make you ready for flight or flight. The tester comes in with a report. Something's wrong. Drip, drip, drip. Ready, ready, ready. Ready for what? The customer calls, screams and shuts down the phone. Drip, drip, drip. Ready, ready, ready. Why? Constant building, constant tension, constant stress, constant trip, trip, trip. Are you ready? So how do we combat this? How do we, in a time of strife, a time of change, a time of problems, find our true selves? Find our ability to connect and find our ability to perform. At work, these are probably the most important. Our ability to start a task, our ability to keep control of our emotions, our ability to be creative, our ability to think out of the box, our ability to perform a planning, to orchestrate, to organize ourselves, and our ability to prioritize. And yet, how often do we see those things failing? How often do we see those things not present in a company, not present in a team, not present to people around us? So when we see this, we need to know there's something drip, drip, dripping, asking us to be ready, ready, ready. And we need to find a way to counter it. And I want to introduce you to cortisol's biggest enemy, oxytocin. So all we need is a cup of coffee. All we need is to say, here's a cup of coffee, how are you? All we need to do is connect, be in the moment. You don't have to go biddy 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 boo boo, but be there in the moment and be there. So ladies and gentlemen, people around the world, I want to ask you tonight, commit with me. Commit to giving a cup of coffee. Commit to receiving a cup of coffee. Commit to asking for a cup of coffee. And commit to let it shine and let other people see those cups of coffee and inspire them to also give you those cups of coffee, to give those cups of coffee to others, to pass it along. And I want to invite you, if you want to come with me, put a hand on someone's shoulder, be there for them. And I want you to grab a cup of coffee, give me one, grab a cup of coffee, give someone else one. And if you really want to, stay for a second cup, because that's how friendships are forged. Thank you.